Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of our ongoing Is This Pilot Actually Good? And rest assured, in this video, the truth is out there about the X-Files. We are going to give you, at least our truth is out there about the X-Files and this pilot, which, here's the crazy thing. Let's all feel really, really old for a minute here. This pilot is closing in on being 30 years old. It is we're talking early mid 90s here when this show first came out.
And you can tell, I mean, the cars, the way everyone's dressed, the haircuts, it feels like that's where we are, is taking us back in a time machine.
Yeah, this is really taking a leap back, but I think it's an interesting pilot. I think it's a rewarding pilot at times. I think it does a lot of things that, they still kind of work now. I think there is still an ability for people to go back and watch the X-Files in 2020 from the very start and be like, oh, this is interesting. And there are things that shows today really still aren't even doing. So we're going to get into all of it. Before we do, if you guys do like this video, subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, hit that notification bell. We do these fairly regularly, and we've had Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which we did not that long ago, Breaking Bad, a lot of other good pilots that are worth checking out.
So, full disclosure here, I have never seen the pilot. This is my first time seeing it. I have seen the show, I've even seen the movie. It was sort of a show that I jumped in here and there and, enjoyed the show while it was airing, but I haven't seen every episode and I hadn't seen the pilot.
I've seen I've seen a little bit of the first several seasons of the show. The problem is it was all so long ago that I don't really remember what I've seen and what I haven't seen. I know I watched the two very recent seasons with a little bit more regularity, and they're still familiar in my mind. I'm not going to make this video my opinion about the final season of the X-Files. This is just the pilot because I want to stay positive and upbeat here.
I have a VHS copy of the movie. That's where I am of how old this show really is.
It's so weird because I think it's just, maybe it's that David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, they're still kind of relevant now. I feel like it's because of that the show doesn't actually feel as old as it is, and I think it's still, the theme song still permeates, the themes of it still do.
The theme song! There was no theme song in this particular episode, in the pilot. It was really weird. It was like, it all sort of was coming together at the beginning. I'm like, oh, here we go. And then it never happened. I was like, what? And it was really strange because it's such an iconic theme song. It's been parodied everywhere over time, so it was a little bit strange.
I feel like what we're kind of seeing in a lot of these pilots that we've done is shows kind of, the theme song isn't the first thing they really think about when they're carving them out. It feels like, okay, we're just going to get the story together. We can figure out the theme song, the opening credits, all that other stuff down the road. But, the X-Files, its premise is so interesting in that it's so simple. It's basically, okay, let's have two characters that matter from the get-go. We're going to have the kind of crazy, I believe in aliens and the paranormal guy whose mind is in the clouds, and then we're going to have the serious, down-to-earth Dana Scully.
Yeah, and this is obviously sort of the odd couple pairing that we've seen on a lot of other shows, and it almost always works, and it works here too, because we do have Mulder, who will believe in anything, and Scully, who believes in science and is always trying to get to the point, where's the science of this? So to watch specifically her, because we kind of get the idea of who he is from the beginning, and he doesn't really waver on any of this. To see her so rooted in science, to get to sort of this end where we go through the case, which is sort of based on real events or events that somebody was sharing. That was the real interesting hook of this pilot for me when they flashed that up. That was kind of like, oh, these are based on real events or real accounts. I was like, interesting. I didn't really remember any of that, so that was cool. But to then have somebody who's so rooted in science going through all of this, and then to get to the end and still have, where she's kind of like, okay, my eyes are open, But here's this little bit of science that I managed to still pocket away because I'm still this person. And I really like that about it, that it wasn't like her character just got like broken down into becoming just like Mulder, where it was like, oh, we're believing in everything now. No, take a step back. I see what you're showing me, but I also see this weird little bit of unexplained science that was found up somebody's nose. That's what I believe in.
That's what I love the most about this show, really. And I think from the very start, this sentiment was kind of out there with a lot of people, where you see a lot of kind of odd couple dynamics like you were sort of talking about. But I feel like at the time you didn't have a lot of, okay, here is the male character is this sort of out there, strange, believes in aliens and all of this. And you know, the female character actually gets to be the grounding force and be the person who kind of reins him in. And I think it sort of takes away some common tropes, which was great and was refreshing at the time. And this is no offense to David Duchovny, who I think is great, but I think Gillian is really the star of the show in the early going. And I was doing like some reading even going into this, and that, you know, Chris Carter, the creator, he had to fight for Gillian Anderson to be on this show. Why would you not want Gillian Anderson to be on the X-Files? She is perfect. I really cannot imagine anyone else playing Scully at all.
No, and the same with David Duchovny at this point. I mean, they're both just such iconic characters, even though I'll say that the writing was pretty good for the pilot. It got where I needed to go. Some of the acting was, all over the place with David Duchovny. It was sometimes he was like right on and the writing really worked for what he was saying. And then there was other times when he was supposed to be like on the phone with someone. I'm like, okay, I don't believe there's anybody on the other end of this. Yeah. This just doesn't feel right. But it didn't matter because the story was really good. The chemistry was really, really good between these two. I mean, there was just I loved that they knew about each other before either of them had actually met, that they both had kind of done their research or heard the rumors, and that it laid out some of the groundwork so that when we met with them, it was really about the first meeting. It was about seeing these two interact with each other and not kind of be like, oh, I know this, I know that.
It made it so that there wasn't just this constant butting of heads where there was respect, but there were also differences of opinion. I think you kind of had a little bit of both working in there, and I like that for the viewers. Yes, I think there's a part of us that all want to believe in what Mulder is believing in, because I think there's a part of us that just wants to live in this world where there are aliens and extraterrestrials. I love that this show still tries to introduce an element of ambiguity, because they want to actually have discussions and they want to have restraint. And I think that's what makes this pilot age so well for me, is that you don't have a bunch of really terrible special effects that are kind of going throughout all of it. It's more about the story and our interpretations of what's going down here in Oregon in this episode. It's not so much about, oh, look at all these flashy effects and here's an alien wandering across and here's some person who's got like a green mask on who's just like speaking some weird language.
No, they did a really good job with the end of this episode, because this show could have easily just been like, oh, and here we are. It's really just the Scooby Gang is out here, and it's really the officer who was the father who was doing all this. Let's take off his mask, and it's not an alien. The thing that I think that was the most brilliant, that was the thing that would bring me back in to watch another episode, was that moment when they were out in the woods and we saw this detective there with Mulder seeing the light, and they're watching everything happen. So it's like, okay, this is really happening. And Scully is not there. So she can sort of see a light over the horizon, but that could be anything. So it still leaves her in the realm of science, where Mulder's right underneath what is probably some kind of a spaceship.
It's great how they have these sort of moments where it's easy to understand where Mulder is coming from after seeing something like that. You would be like, oh yeah, that's an alien for sure. But then it's also great to have these moments where Mulder is clearly getting to Scully, where the mosquito bite incident, for example, suddenly thinking that, oh, she's getting attacked by some sort of alien being, and then you have that brief moment where the roles are reversed. So, Chris Carter puts enough flexibility, I think, with these characters that they're not just completely cardboard cutouts. There's some flexibility as to how they can feel. And I think, though, the other real sells of this show is everyone wants to believe that the government is up to something. Like, it doesn't matter if you think aliens are real or not. I think we all have this idea in our head that something is weird at Area 51 and we all want to find out what it is. This show plays so well into all of that.
Absolutely. That ending with the Smoky Man walking through the archives and putting away her only little bit of science that was actually there was brilliant. It completely reminded me of Raiders of the Lost Ark with that last scene where they're putting the Ark of the Covenant away, and then you pull back and just like boxes and boxes and boxes of other artifacts that are all like hidden away by the government. It's a really cool idea and twist that you've got these two agents that are working for these people, and they're just bringing them information and actual evidence that they're just hiding away. It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's well played. It's a great tease for what's coming up. Like the X-Files, I think almost better than any show out there. They do a really good job of convincing you to watch the next episode and then kind of hilariously not paying off that twist for like another however many episodes down the road. It's like they drive you so insane, but the strength of this show comes in those sort of cases of the week, and that's why I think the X-Files is kind of similar to Doctor Who in a way, where you've got some excellent episodes of this show where you get all in, and then you've got some others that, to be honest, are downright terrible, and there are some in the revival seasons that are awful. But then, because some of the ones that you love, they're so good, like the pilot to me is so good in its simplicity and its presentation of the characters that it gets you on board, and that helps when you get to those duds, because it's sort of like, oh yeah, I know how good this show can be, so I'm going to stick around for those really good ones.
Yeah, and the fact that it's rooted in accounts by real people, I think that was just a huge draw for the show right away, where it's like, okay, you have these two really great characters that have amazing chemistry. They're both on opposite ends of sort of what's going on, but they're coming together for this cause to try to figure it out. And it didn't end up sort of ending really cheesy where there were no aliens, or maybe there were. It was kind of like you actually let the audience think about what they wanted to see themselves as well. Are we going to be more of a Scully? Are we going to be more of a Mulder? We get to decide what we want to be in this situation, and there are not very many shows that allow that.
There aren't, and that's something I think about a lot, in the event that the X-Files had been a more recent show. Like, what would they have made them change? Like, I think we talked about the lack of CGI, and I think if they did this pilot now, they would probably try to shoehorn, like, all this nonsense in there and be like, we have to have an action sequence. We have to... I like that we didn't have that, and the question I kind of think a lot about here is we know how successful the X-Files has become, right? It's got movies, revivals. I'm pretty sure there were probably lunchboxes with Mulder and Scully on them.
I have one.
Exactly. I was the funniest thing is in my head, I was thinking, I feel like I may have heard of this somewhere before, not realizing it was probably from you that I heard it from.
Yeah, I have one.
So, okay, well then let's go back.
I love the whole mystery of it all, but also just for me, growing up, I was a redhead. I'm dyeing my hair now, but there was not a lot of redheads on TV or in movies or really anywhere. And that's still kind of the case today. So to have somebody who was like a female lead with a red hair, I was like, okay, here we go. This is cool. I think that it is a part of it. I think a part of the appeal of Scully is, okay, she's got a different personality than most characters on TV. She looks different than a lot of people on TV. She's smart. She's intuitive. That's why I think the show plays so well. But it's so hard to put ourselves in that place where if we had seen this pilot,
all the way back on more than 25 years ago, would we have ever imagined that this would have become the phenomenon that it did? Like, I would have probably been like, this is a very good pilot, and I do think it's a good pilot. I don't know if I probably would have thought, okay, maybe it gets 5 or 6 seasons, maybe one movie. I would not have still predicted that it would have taken off in the way that it has.
Yeah, I don't know that I would have thought that it was going to take off as big as it did. For sure, 5 or 6 seasons, but I think it's just a tip of the hat to the Scully and Mulder characters. I mean, their characters are really well thought out. They were really well thought out in this pilot alone. I have seen, of course, other episodes, so you see that development over time. I mean, they're the draw.
And it's such an influential show. Like, I think so many other shows over the past few decades have taken something from Scully and Mulder, their relationship. I single-handedly credit the X-Files for giving us Breaking Bad because Vince Gilligan was on it. Bryan Cranston was on it very, very briefly. That led to Bryan Cranston being Walter White. I know that is a complete tangent, but it is still important to me. And I think if we get to that question of, is this pilot actually good? Yes, the pilot for the X-Files is very, very good. I don't have it in my personal top 5 of all time. I think probably the moment with the light is the most iconic moment from it. It's not top 10 for me, but I think it is a very, very enjoyable pilot.
Yeah, this is a very good pilot. It was really strong. There was a couple things that don't age that well, and then there were some things that were just straight up kind of strange. But that was more of... For me, for those of you who don't know, I'm a former funeral director. I've worked in a morgue a long time. So some of the stuff that I was seeing in the morgue scene, you've got, I mean, I know it was a long time ago, but PPE gear was still in play back then. So seeing Scully just wearing a smock and gloves, I'm like, where's your eye protection? Where's your mask? We got Mulder over here isn't even wearing any gloves. Like, we don't know what you guys are touching, and you don't know what you're touching. You don't know if it has disease. This could be killing you right now. Yeah. So I was just sitting there being like, okay, this is a little... I can maybe understand Mulder being like, I don't care, but, Scully's going to care. So where is the rest of it, guys? So there was a little bit of that for me. I was just like, okay.
Well, that didn't age well. That's not that didn't age well. That's just wrong. Like, they shouldn't have gotten that right at the start.
Yeah, the thing that didn't age well was that joke about the produce section from the nurse with people who are in a vegetative state. I was just kind of like, that's not going to fly today. That probably shouldn't have flown back then, but it did, so here we are.
This is one of those things that I'm afraid people do behind closed doors still, but if it ever came out, they would instantly get fired. I was so surprised that was there, and once again, it feels like this doesn't age well, but also, it didn't even age like 5 minutes after it aired. Like, this was bad then.
I'm not saying that there aren't healthcare workers that make those types of jokes or say those types of things, but just the same,
it's still not good.
I was just like, oh wow, okay. And that just kind of, with everyone else that was in the room, it was like, yeah, this is normal. We say these things about the people we care for here at this place. I'm just like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Well, overall, I think it does enough that's interesting. It has dynamic enough characters. It really, in the pilot, you don't get a full scope of the mythology, but that takes years upon years upon years. I like the pilot. I'm glad to have gone and checked it out now at this point.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, if it's a really good pilot to me means that I would want to watch it in the next episode. And I absolutely would. I mean, I have, like I said, seen a bunch of other episodes. I own the movie on VHS somewhere that I can never play because we don't have a VHS player. But that's that. So, yeah, is this pilot actually good? Yeah, this is a good pilot. This holds up.
Yeah.
Like, almost 30 years later, it holds up.
Yeah, I think it holds up better than a good many of the ones we've honestly done so far. But... for you guys, want to know your thoughts on the pilot, your memories of watching it. Were you on board with the X-Files right away? I feel like this is a show where, maybe your parent was watching it or your friend was watching it, and then you kind of get on board with it. It had that sort of like grassroots spread. But let us know in the comments. And if you did like this video, give us a like, subscribe, and you can support us further by checking that link in the description to the store. And we'll see you here next time.